Hi, everybody. Today we're going to be breaking down the cinematography of Her. This was a very requested film, and I had actually not seen it. You guys probably get the sense that I don't watch a ton of movies, or I haven't been for the last couple of years. I've been in commercials with my head down in that world for quite a while, but I'm starting to just come back to movies, and you guys are really helping me pick out the good ones because I watched Drive because of you and Sicario for some. I didn't see either one of those movies, and they were both incredible. And I think it's fair to say that I'm starting to like movies again, especially after Her. I thought that this was an incredible film, directed by Spike Jonze, who I've worked with. I wasn't DPing, but we've worked together. Maybe I'll talk about that at the break or the end. And shot by Hoyt van Hoytema or Hotema. He's doing some incredible work, and I wasn't even aware that he shot this movie. And this is probably one of my favorite movies ever. And I think I told Diana, my wife, that I think I'm getting older, so that's maybe why I'm relating to like these kind of movies all of a sudden. But so we're gonna break down more of a high level thing on this one. We're not gonna look at any B-roll really or concentrate too much on the techniques. We're gonna look more at the high level, and it's gonna be a pretty long one. And I'm still trying to figure out this format, but we're essentially gonna go chronological order through the movie, through the frames, through the scenes. I'm going to kind of break down some of the bigger themes and some of the things that I've seen in the interpretations that I'm taking from it. So very subjective. We will be starting this after the break. Okay, so the best place to start is always IMDb. Now, despite all the advertisings, we're not breaking down Angry Birds. We're going to be breaking down Her. So this came out 2013. Wow, we're going back in time. It's old. They're categorizing it as a drama, romance, and sci-fi. That's cool. That's cool. I remember when I saw the trailer for this and I see the artwork for it, like, and I didn't really understand like what it was. It didn't connect with me at the time. But 2013, that was a long time ago. I was a lot younger then. Now this definitely resonates with me a lot more. This kind of plot line. And we'll check out Hoyt's IMDb page. Man, they put ads all over this thing. I think I started to really pay attention to Hoyt when Interstellar came out. So from Her to Interstellar, I mean, that's amazing. So that kind of shows you where Her was in Hoyt's career. I think that was kind of a big turning point. And then it turned into Interstellar and Spectre. And I don't know what Dunkirk is. What's Dunkirk? Dunkirk. The film tells the story of the Dunkirk evacuation, which took place at the beginning of World War II. We're going to be making movies and video games apparently about World War II forever. So let's go right into the breakdown here. So, Her. Just so you know, there's 13 parts to this. So I guess after like 6, we'll try to take a tea break. And let's do it. So here's our slate. There was a little cute behind the scenes film for this. And I think they shot it on Super 8, which is the super Spike Jonze like aesthetic. He's very like hand drawn. Longtime music collaborator for his films is Karen O. That I'm not sure she did anything for this movie. And yeah, Spike Jonze, Hoyt van Hoytema, untitled Rick Howard project. I don't know the story behind that, but also in this frame is a Anton Bauer big battery block. And some more Anton Bauer mini chargers going on here. Quad charger. So yeah, film set stuff. So the first act is the intro. That's what I'm calling it. And we meet our main character. It's a Theo. And right away, the first shot is this extremely shallow depth of field shot of him. And we don't know what's going on because I don't think his lips are moving. I don't remember. Maybe he is talking. And he is reciting this letter that he's writing. And the thing that stuck out to me immediately with what he was saying was that he's writing love letters for people. It's kind of abstract. It's kind of a weird business that doesn't quite exist now, I don't think. And he says that he's writing this letter for this couple. And he's saying that like when I met you, it was like a ray of sunlight like hit me in the face. And I think that metaphor pretty much carries through for the entire movie, is that other people are, bring light into people's lives, and it's kind of blinding. And also at the same time, it kind of saves them, so it's kind of like religious in that way. And as we move on to the next frame, I'll say that the depth of field in this movie is extremely shallow, and it works for the film. And we'll talk about that as we go through. But this is the first shot. and it holds for quite a while. Really appreciated the beginning of this film, and it sets up the color palette as well. Is this kind of was white on set, but color corrected, somewhat yellowish and toned down, but with these red colors flanking him. We see here that this is him in his office, and it's very colorful. I'm sure there was other analysis of this film. People have been linking to Every Frame a Painting, which I had actually not heard of until I interviewed someone recently that said that was their favorite YouTube channel. And then someone started linking it, and I watched some of Tony's videos. Is that who it is? And they're incredible, and they're amazing. I can tell the amount of research that goes into it. My videos aren't like that. A lot of the times, these breakdowns, I pretty much watch the movie. I take some frames from it, and then like an hour later, I do a breakdown. I'm not doing research. I actually, for this type of high level, I'd rather not be influenced by other people's reviews or their thoughts on it. I don't even read the description of the film because that can kind of taint your thoughts on it. So this is really just like my reaction to it. And I watched it last night actually, and that was like a couple hours ago. And I pulled some stills, and then I make this video, and it's straight through. I don't script it. I'm just talking about it, just to give you background and kind of how the high level stuff works. For these kind of breakdowns. So he's in his office, and like I said, there's these colors in here. I don't know what to say about that. We have clearly red and pink are a big theme. So red and pink and white. That's like kind of the color palette of the movie. But we have the opposite color is green, and this is a very like kind of like rainbow colored office. He works in a very like happy office, I guess. I think that's what I see when I see rainbow. I think of like Google or ABC. And so this is him, and he writes letters for people in this office. And this is another establishing shot of it. Lots of translucent glass that you can see through. And this light here is presumably like tinted pink glass. See how there's like tinted colors here as well. And it's a very bright office. And all these people are writers, and they write love letters for people or something like that. And then it's very colorful. I don't know what to think about that. I guess we'll kind of dissect it as we go through. But we see these pink reflections and this pink light everywhere. What is this pink light representing? And the pink here, it's a very, there's an art style where there's paintings that look like this. They're just like geometric shapes with color over each other. I don't know the movement, but it kind of reminds me of that. And here's Theodore as he's leaving work, and then immediately you see his like reality world is very blue and monochromatic, and there's less color. Really, he's the color of the world, And I think it was interesting that he wore this red blazer. I actually own a red blazer like this, but I bought it because the lead singer of Muse has it. He did a concert with wearing a red blazer, so I went and bought a red blazer. It was that simple. And so this is the first. We're still meeting him. We're understanding. We're learning about him. It's exposition. And I think we're in his office, and his office is very bright and daylight and colorful. And then as he's walking home, we see that he's very in a very desaturated and in blue world. And if we were to break this in halves, which I did watch that Drive breakdown, and he broke down the halves composition pretty well. We are breaking it that way, and he's below the city. Still horizon of the frame is here, so he's still above it. We're not like looking straight down at him where the horizon would be up here, but he is definitely a small person in this big city, and this landscape here, which is all CG, I'd imagine, just starts to give you the setting that this is a in the future, like the near future, like 2050, 2060, something like that, but it's definitely in the future, and he is red against this blue environment. So, what's happening in this introduction is that here's him on the subway, is that the shallow depth of field and the way that it's framed and the way that you kind of don't associate with these people, they're kind of blank. All the people around him, is that we're showing that he's isolated, but the red jacket, the red shirt, and he's dressed well, and he works in this like beautiful office. Like, I feel like his life is okay. He's doing okay in life, but he's isolated right now, and we see that, and it's being shown us. That's being shown to us. And here's him playing that video game, that game where he's like running through the world with this little virtual character. And I want to play this video game. This is like the Vive in a couple of years. It's all just to show that, I'm not reading into the green lighting all that much. It's just that he's in a dark room by himself, and his room's, it's kind of a mess. Why are these boxes, like, is he moving? Like, what's going on in his world? It's a little bit messy. it's a nicely designed office. I mean, I think I'd have to assume that in the future things are still expensive. He must be doing fairly well, but he's clearly sad and he's clearly alone. And so this is a scene. It's hard to see maybe on the computer, but this is the first time you see him alone in bed and he's lonely. You know, we learned that he's been recently divorced, about a year ago, something like that. And you know, people allude that he's not dating, so he calls this like chat room that's just like it's like the equivalent of like, you know, an online like sex chat room or something like that. And he talks to this like really kind of crass automated sex chat thing, and he has like, you know, phone sex has phone sex with that operator, or maybe it's probably not a real person. It sounds like it's a recording. And we see him alone in his bed, and kind of a dark and lonely scene. I think if you ended the movie here, you'd be like, I feel really dirty and creepy that I just watched that. But it does open up a lot farther into that. So here's a flashback. So to contrast kind of the lighting and what it looks like, this is a flashback to when he was happy, and we start to learn about his wife that he's now separated from and about to get a divorce. We come back to these flashbacks every once in a while about his past life. You know, he says it. He's like, you know, I think it was this movie. They say that, like, you know, the past is a story that you tell yourself. There's a lot of great one-liners like this in this movie. Spike Jonze is an incredible writer. I have so much more respect, just more respect. Not that I didn't have it before, but I have so much more respect for him now that he wrote this movie, and how much it resonated with me. So this is a flashback with back when he's like kind of like seems like early with his wife at the time, you know, and they're in this sunlight space, the sunny apartments, and then they show them moving into it, and they're just having fun together, you know, and doing like new love stuff. And just to contrast like the kind of lighting that's in this world, it's very overexposed, I would say. Not overexposed like blown out, but bright. It's a bright scene. And then this kind of color correct where they crush the highlights down and tint it a tiny bit warm, and the blacks are a little lifted as well. That's the look, and I kind of see it here as well, but this has a little bit more of a down tone. Whereas this stuff is they let it go hot, they let it go bright on him and blow it out. This is his flashback. This is the story that he's. I don't know if you guys hear the helicopter outside of the plane. This is the story that he tells himself about his past, and that's his like kind of like ex-wife. So we're moving into part 2, where I'm calling it meeting the OS. So this is when he meets the OS. And he's walking outside, and actually I'm going to cut to these ones. I have the order wrong here. I'm going to throw these up here first. This is where he meets the OS for the first time. And I'm going to also talk about a filmmaking technique that they used in this film where we're basically dollying or steady-camming, following alongside the character, Theo here, and we start wide. We start in a wide shot, and as we dolly with him, we get closer. And that's something that happens over and over in the film. And I'm still trying to work out what exactly that means, but it's something that happens over and over in the film. And I kept noticing it, and I haven't spent a ton of time thinking about it, but it's something I noticed, so I wanted to call that here. So we see this medium shot, not too wide, but as we dolly forward, we do end up in this kind of close-up, and he's looking at this advertisement that's on some TV screen. And what immediately hit me, even the first time watching it, was that these people this is the ad that we're looking at here. They're staring at something, and it's light. It's light hitting them in the face, and we have this flare here. And it's just like he said in the beginning of the movie. He's like, you know, I met you, and it was like a beam of light was hitting me in the face. And that's what's happening to these people in this advertisement. You know, what they're looking at this light source, and it's something is illuminating them, and something is making them happy. And I think that's what the advertisement's alluding to that the OS will do. So he goes and gets the OS, and he's like, oh, okay, there's like a new OS that's gonna like help you with your life. That sounds like a good idea. And what I want to talk about in this scene, other than these beautiful practicals, is more about the coverage. So if you know about the 180 rule, if we have, say we're gonna look straight down, say this is the desk with the computer on it, and say that this is him looking at it. So the 180 rule basically draws a line like this, and right now we are on this side of it. I should have drawn this higher in the screen, but we have the camera looking at him this way, so that when we do coverage, it should be on this side, and this angle should be on that side. That's how we would keep the eye lines correct, so that he's always looking to the right and the computer's always looking to the left. That's what the 180 degree rule is for. It's just for legibility in the filmmaking process. But what filmmakers like Spike Jonze and more advanced filmmakers use is they break the 180 rule. And I think people have heard this, but it's like, why do you break it? This is a really good, an interesting example of when they break it. And I think it's something I didn't pick up until the second time I started looking at these frames. So when we're on this side of the desk, I'm going to say this as far as like my read on this scene and how this works out for the whole movie. When we're on this side of the desk, looking at him this way, on this side of the line, he thinks of the OS as a computer. He doesn't think of the OS as a personality or something that you could have a relationship with. This is the very formal way of seeing a computer. So when we're on this side of the line, he's on that side, computer's on that side. It's just like, you know, how you think about a computer, how I think about this computer. I'm not in love with that computer. Don't listen to him. You know, so basically when we're on this side, I think that we're like, as an audience, like we don't quite buy that this is like a real personality yet. And so he starts to talk with the OS, and it's kind of engaging. He switches it to the female voice, and the OS is born. The personality is born. It's generated based on his relationship with his mother, was the question. And we're still on this side of the scene, but we see him leaning in. He's starting to engage more with this. And we see this red throughout all these things. I mean, so there's something there. And it's red. Is it love? Is it as simple as the red means that he's in love, you know, and he's looking for love? I'm not sure. So here's how you do a pivot on the 180 rule. Now, I'm going to do it here. So now we have our desk like this. That's a terrible try. Here's him. Here's our line. We started on this side of the world, and then the close-ups were that way. But the way you pivot, the way that you get to this other side, what you can do is you can shoot a shot like this, and you pivot on this angle, okay? So if you were cutting between these two shots, when you cut to this shot, which is what we're looking at now, straight on, now you're allowed to go to that angle, but you wouldn't cut between these two angles, okay? You can cut between these two, and you can cut between these two, but typically you don't cut between those two. It's jarring. But this is the pivot shot, and it's a turning point. This is when the OS starts talking to him, and he's like, he pivots. He's like, wow, this thing is really, it's something else. And then where do we end up? We end up on the other side of the line, okay? So I'm going to just draw this again really quickly. Here's our desk. We started over here. Now we're over here. We're on the other side. And when we go to this other side of the line, what I'm picking up on and what I see is that he starts to see Samantha as a person or as something more than a computer. When he's looking to the left, like this, screen left, he's starting to acknowledge Samantha as a person. And then this also exposes his left ear, which is where he puts Samantha in eventually. Now, we're still on this side of the line, but he's turned away. He's turning away from her. So this is acknowledging Samantha, and this is rejecting it. And there's this constant back and forth. The whole crux of this movie, or not the whole crux, but a lot of the movie is like, is it okay to have a relationship with an artificial intelligence, with something that doesn't have a body, that isn't a human? Is that okay? And this is that line. It's like, to the left is accepting it, and to the right is escaping it. You know, and that's what I start to see here. And then we have an interesting shot like this, which is the reflection of that scene, where he's deciding. This is the turning point, I think, in the movie right here, where he's like I said, when you see reflections, when you see two of one person in the scene, something's happening. He's splitting. It's like his mind is splitting. It's like, do I accept Samantha? Are we going to have a relationship? Or is this weird? Is this a weird thing? And we see that, like I said, when you're on this side of the line, when we're looking at it from this way, it's like he doesn't accept it. But he clearly goes on to accept it later. And I thought this is a really beautiful and interesting way of showing this inner turmoil, this decision that he's having in his mind. And then we pull out to what I would consider the pivot shot. This shot pulls back like this to show more and more of his apartment. And this guy has a really cool apartment. Reminds me of a Woody Allen movie, though this is apparently like futuristic Los Angeles. So that's the meeting. That's when he first meets Samantha. So let's see, what are we on to next? So Act 3, I'm calling Neighbor's Divorce. So here he's basically having like consistent conversations with Samantha. And Samantha's in his left ear a lot of the times. And he's playing that video game, and she's reading his emails, and she's like, oh, you know, your friend set you up with this girl, and you guys have a date. You should email her. And she basically sets them up on a date, and she alludes to it. She's like, you guys could like go get dinner, you could hang out, you could kiss her, you know. And Samantha is Well, I'll get to that point next. But he sets him up on a date, and he's playing this green video game. But I'm not reading into the colors of this, but there is a green versus red type of thing going on in this movie. I don't focus a ton on this breakdown about their relationship. I mean, the whole movie could be done about this marriage, but I'll just say that it's like, we have Theo, who's in between them. Like these two are basically not happy in their marriage, and the conversations they're having. I mean, I've had those conversations before. With my wife. It's a thing you have. You guys. It's real. It's a pretty real dynamic I think they put between these two married people here, and it's it's a tricky thing. And I think that they did a good job illustrating this. It's not like someone's like straight up abusive, and it's like he hits her, and it's like way more subtle than that, and it's really clearly illustrated here. And we see that there's this divide between these two people, and then right in the middle is Theo. Theo's like in the middle of them. And then even in these shots, they keep Theo in between the two characters that are not so happy with each other at this point. And we see Theo just in between them. So I thought that was interesting. But then he gets this call from Samantha, and Samantha's like, oh, your lawyer's on the phone. It's your divorce lawyer. So now we find out that Theo's divorced. That's the first time I think we really get that, Theodore. And what I like about these two shots is that it's, there's I'm gonna have to I don't like formalize a lot of this. If I'd written this as like an essay first and then done it, I'd have more to say about it in a concise way. But we have a lot of shots where what you would think is in focus is out of focus. That seems kind of weird, but we're focusing past him, and we're looking at the city behind him while he is talking out of focus. So we just hear his voice, and we're disconnecting from his body. We see him talking, and the focus comes back, but we're focused past him. So we're just listening to him, kind of like how he listens to Samantha, because Samantha doesn't have a body. There's so much to talk about with this, but I'll say that if you watch moving forward, is like we, the viewer, are looking past him. We're just listening to him, and we're looking at something beyond him. And that's something that I catch myself doing sometimes when I'm talking to people. Maybe I'm weird. But it's also something that he does, is that when he's having a dialogue with Samantha, he can't look at Samantha. So he's always looking at something else. And sometimes they cut to what he's looking at, and it's really interesting. And he has these flashback scenes where this is the flashback to when he's getting divorced, obviously. This is the divorce meeting. Like, here's his lawyer, here's her lawyer. He's looking at her through him. Sad deal here. This is still the flashback, and here's him trying to focus on the lawyer, who's probably telling him about how this is going to go down. And this, puts Theodore in a bad mood. I hope his name is Theodore. Let me just get this right. Make sure. Theodore. Okay, cool. I don't want to go the whole movie getting his name wrong. But so he's in a bad place, and this guy lives in an amazing apartment. And the city is just always present in these scenes, and this throws him off. Thinking about his ex-wife, and the divorce, it puts him in a bad place. And I guess it's in his right ear. I always thought there was something that the ear he puts it on. There's something there, I think, about what ear it's on. So when he looks to his left, he's looking out the window, and she's in his right ear. That's interesting to me. And she basically tells him, she's like, hey, cheer up, man. Like, it's not so bad. You can wallow in your sadness, but do it while you're getting up. And she cheers him up, and it's she's really trying to make him feel better. And that's cool, So this is a shot. I didn't pick the right one, but there's these cubes over his desk, over him. And they do this little intro shot where these are spinning around each other. It's kind of like a little universe. Like, this is a sun, and these are planets, and they're rotating around each other. I thought that was kind of a beautiful little intro shot, and I see it as like a little planet. And I'm kind of forgetting the context here. I think this is where they really start to be dating or something like that. This is when they start to date, and they go on this montage date where he closes his eyes and she sees for him, and she just leads him around to do fun things. And it's she sees through here, and they're just go at a carnival. And this is what you would do on a first date with someone you just met, is you go to something light and something fun, something that's easy, and you run around and you have a good time, except he's doing it with an AI here, which is kind of interesting, right? Really, really interesting. And he has this clothespin there. I never understood what that was fully. And here's when I think they start to like really fall in love. You know, they're analyzing other couples, and she's like, "Wow, you know, you are really good at reading other people. You know, you can look at them, you can read into their lives. Like you're really sensitive." And she likes that about him. You know, and she's in his right ear. In the right ear. So this is how they do a close up of Theo and Samantha. It's in focus of his glasses, which is interesting because it's talking about the lenses that he sees the world through. So like, what is he looking at while he's talking to her, you know? And she's here in the earbud. And this is how they do the close-ups, and it's really interesting. And it's very shallow focus, and it's like this is intimate. This is an intimate shot between Samantha and Theodore. Kind of interesting. So she sets him up on the date, and at this point they're just friends. Like, so I think she wants Theodore to go and be happy, and she doesn't know what love is necessarily. And he says that she doesn't know what it means to lose someone, you know, and that sets her off in an interesting way of trying to understand what that means. So he goes on this date, and this talks about real world dating, like after marriage or after a long-term relationship. I don't know how many of you guys have had to do that before. It's interesting. You know, you're not quite a full person after a divorce or after a big breakup like that. You know, and meeting new people is like kind of terrifying, and it's hard, and they both get super drunk, and I think they both understand how awkward this kind of is. And what I would say here is that this mini frame here, this framing reminds me of, not that this movie's in widescreen, when he was first meeting Samantha, the computer, right? So this reminds me of that framing, where we're on this side of the world. It just seemed the same to me. Let's see if I can go find that. It reminds me of this. So is this going to work? Right? So he's talking to a real world person versus the computer. And that's kind of the comparison that starts to happen here. It's like, well, this relationship with this OS is okay. It's weird, but it's not something that I understand or is accepted. But here's a traditional relationship where they met in person. And we'll see how this goes. But this sets that up to me, that it's like you're comparing. How is it Samantha versus Olivia Wilde? How's that going to go? These days, you'd be like, I think Olivia Wilde would probably be the one to go with, but, you know, in his world, in this future, maybe not. So she's clearly interested in him, though I don't have a great read on her character, like what her deal is. I don't know why. Did she have kids? There were, in the emails, they had pictures of her with kids and dogs, and it's like, oh, she's like a, you know, a normal person, right? Is that what's going on? And she's clearly engaged with him. And this shot, this frame here, we'll talk about that later. And how it relates to, I think, Samantha, you know, and he likes her too, sort of, you know, he got really drunk, and he's telling her like a weird story, and they start to make out, and then she basically asks him, she's like, you know, at this age, I can't be, I don't have time to be in a relationship with someone that's not serious. And, you know, he's still getting over his wife. I think he was just looking for like a fling, or he wasn't looking for anything. Someone set him up on it, and Samantha pushed him into this. He wouldn't have done this. And he's realizing that he's like, oh, this is a mistake. Like, I don't know you. I don't really like you, I don't think. You know, we were just going to, you know, have sex and he's going to feel better. That's what he was going to do. And she's like, you know what? That's happened to me before. I don't want to do that. And he just realizes, he's like, this is just, I'm not ready, and this isn't right. And then she gets really hurt and, you know, ends up in a sad world. And so we have this close-up on his glasses again, and he's like looking off into the world. There's a lot of close-ups on his glasses, and there's a lot of metaphors here about his eyes and what he's seeing, and how these glasses are, I think in a way the glasses are a metaphor for him seeing the world and the story about his past. Like they say, the past is the story you tell yourself. I think these glasses are like, you know, the old way. He's seeing the world through old lenses, you know, dirty old lenses. And it's like, I think that's what's going on in this film. And there's a couple scenes where he takes them off, where it's more intimate, and he sees things in a newer way, in a fresher way. And I want to talk about the fresher way pretty soon. So he's just come back after that date. Things didn't go very well. I mean, I think they went fine for him. If he had just lied, he could have had sex with Olivia Wilde. But he didn't. You know, that's not what he's looking for. He's older. You know, that's not what he's into right now, and he doesn't want to hurt her and just get deeper into that mire. Getting through a divorce, I think, makes you think a lot about entering new relationships with people. And what I want to talk about here is the comparison between Samantha and Olivia Wilde. So that's what's clearly being set up here. Samantha versus Olivia Wilde. OS versus a real person. So he's talking with Samantha. He's like, that didn't go well. You know, he's in his own head, right? And we'll talk about that later too. What I want to talk about with Olivia Wilde, and kind of like some of the bigger arc of this movie, is this movie takes you through, both through flashback and through his experience with Samantha, the different stages of a relationship. And he talks about it. He says, he's like, you know, like we meet each other and it's exciting. And then it's the honeymoon phase and we have sex all the time and we're just having a great time together. Everything is perfect, you know, but then you enter this new phase where it's like, okay, that's fun. And you start to go through like the real relationship. And then they talk about growing. They talk about growing separately or together. Separately, people grow in different ways. And sometimes they grow into different, you know, different people, different paths, you know, and Olivia Wilde has a past, you know, and that cycle where you fall in love and then you, you fall in love and then you fall apart, you know, you fall out of love. That cycle happens maybe multiple times. And that's happened to Olivia Wilde. And she says it, you know, she's like, you're not going to have sex with me and leave me like the other people, you know, and it's happened to him. He's in the middle of a divorce, you know, of a breakup. And it makes it hard for humans to trust each other because you have this past, you know, you don't trust each other. You've been through these things, you know that you can get hurt. And Olivia Wilde has that, he has it, but Samantha doesn't have that. Samantha is like a newborn baby in a way. She was just born on the computer. She doesn't know anything about love. She's innocent. She doesn't know anything about this. She can't get hurt, so she's willing to be open. And he says, I feel like I could tell you anything. And that's because she has no judgments of him. She doesn't know anything. She doesn't know any better. But Olivia Wilde, she's been through it. She understands this look is, you know, of fear and sadness. And he has the same thing. He has the same thing inside of him. You know, but Samantha doesn't have that. And that's something refreshing to Theodore. He wants that. He finds that attractive. And they bond and she's trying to make him feel better. And then they have, you know, they have like human OS sex or whatever. It sounds really weird, and especially if you didn't see the movie, it seems really weird. But it's really interesting and well done. And what I start to see in this landscape here is we start to see the human face in a more abstract way for this. And I think that's a big part of this movie is abstracting the body. You know, this movie is like, can you have a relationship with something that's just in your head, that it doesn't have a physical form? And as he attempts to do that, I think he tries, like with the filmmakers start to obscure his human form. You know, this is the way that they, like you barely even see his eyes. You just see this little light and this kind of odd, abstract, like mountainous shape is his body. And it's almost like in voiceover. Actually, I think during the sex scene, it goes to black because it's just about the voices. It's just about this like, you know, thing in your head, and the background goes completely abstract. To me, it seems like a spaceship. Like his apartment seems like a spaceship when they're talking to each other like this, and those are just like stars, like out of focus. You know, and that's Act 5, where they have they like kind of like consummate the relationship. Oh, I screwed this up. Let me do one thing. You're seeing through to the background. There were a lot of frames in this, so I had to kind of speed this up the way that I prepped this. So here's Act 6, and then we're going to take a break. So, oh man, I messed this up. But, so what are we going to do here? How are we going to do this? So I did this kind of backwards. So we're going to do this, right? Okay. So, I apologize that this is all messed up. Why didn't I didn't prep this right. Just give me like 2 seconds. I did not prep this correctly for some reason. These breakdowns are kind of a lot of work to put together, and I'm super happy to do them. And I'm personally learning a lot and getting a lot out of these, like in multiple ways. But sometimes I mess up the setup, so sorry about that. So this is after they've had sex, and they're like kind of like, it's so fun. It's like after you meet someone for the first time and you guys, you know, you get intimate. It's like you wake up in the morning, it's kind of like, so hey, you know, and this conversation he's having, but he's having it with the computer. And again, we're on this side of the line, right? We're on this world. So now he's kind of like back to like, we're at this kind of like standoff relationship thing where it's like you're a computer and I'm a human, sort of. We're on this side of the line, right? Okay, just like in the beginning. And he's like, I just wanted to tell you that, I'm not looking for a serious relationship, which is funny. And we're on this side of the line. And then he sits down and starts to talk to her again. They start to get a little bit closer, right? Like this is like the proximity here has gotten smaller. They're having a conversation. There's one point I wanted to touch on, but then we flip. We're on the other side of the line. She's like, hey, I don't want a relationship. I'm cool. I don't even have a body. Like, so he starts to like see her again, see her as a person, as something to have a relationship with. Oh yeah, and when they're having when they're having sex in the bedroom, his glasses are off. Okay? His glasses are off. He's seeing new things without the old tinted lenses, without the old baggage, the old way of seeing. He's not wearing the glasses, but he kind of puts them back on, one, to see, two, his protection. He's protecting himself. He's back with the old lenses of the world here. But as he gets closer, we flip to the other side of the line. He starts to engage with Samantha again as more of a person. And he's like, you know what? Let's go do something fun. That's what you'd want to do after you guys like just met and just had like you're in the romantic phase of your career of your relationship. Here's a tracking shot with like I would guess about an 85 mil to longer, maybe a 135 millimeter tracking shot. So you see a Steadicam shot with a 135 mil on. You're like, what is that for? That's what this is. This long telephoto shot that's moving, and what it does is it makes the depth of field very shallow and it keeps him isolated from the background. Right? Everything else is very shallow or is very out of focus. He takes a nap with her here, and he takes his glasses off. Fully committing to this, I think, like new type of relationship. He takes his glasses off. He's laying down. He's accepting this new world. We see all these other real world couples, right? Maybe I don't know who's all a couple, whatever. We see some couples and kids. Nice sand bucket. I got a couple of those for my kids. And he's hanging out with his I was gonna say person, his significant other. I don't know what you say to this, or what you call an OS. And he's sleeping, and we have these flares happening, and I think this is like happiness, right? And in a way, it's like here's Samantha, here's him. This is a couple shot, at the beach, and we see these flares happening, which is I think the sunlight that we talked about in the beginning. The sunlight hitting him in the face is Samantha, and I found this like cool behind the scenes still of Hoyt here. My hair looks like that right now, with an ultralight on, with a little 4x4, maybe smaller mirror, and he's just reflecting the sun into the lens, and that's how they're getting this. So we did do one technical breakdown, but that's literally the last one for the entire movie. And then they shut down the beach. They stayed there all day, just having fun together, just talking. Here she is, here he is. And they're having a romantic sunset together, and he's having a great time. And so is she down here. I don't know what the clothespin's for. Are the clothespins to boost her up? Is that what's going on? That's funny. So that is Act 6. And we're going to take a tiny break here. And I kind of apologized before, like this movie is like really, really got to me and still gets to me. So I'm trying not to like lose it and like, break down on this, cause it's real, man. This is real. Oh yeah, let's actually take the tea. I kind of drank all of this before the show because I was thirsty. But you don't know that. So I did a redesign for Cinedesigner, the website. I kind of broke this down into different sections. So here's Cinedesigner, which for you people that don't know, this is my 3D Cinedesigner previs app for cinematographers and directors. And it's such a... we're going to see more and more of this as the users start to grow, and I'm seeing amazing work done. It's an amazing place to experiment with cinematography. To really just like look at the high level aesthetics, think about where the lighting is coming from, look at framing, and it's something you can do on your computer for free, and it's infinite. You get sucked into it. The people that have started to use it, they tell me, I just spent 6 hours doing this, and then the time disappeared, and it's like, you can get into you can make the shots that we're watching in Her happen in 3D. And you don't have to worry about all the physical, like having a real location, having people, having lights. I know that's obvious, but like you start to treat this as like a real filmmaking process, and you can start to do some amazing things in it. So people have been telling me that, and I personally find that's true. I have a couple new sections I've broken out. Here's the database section. So I'm trying to list out all the different tools that are in it. This isn't all of them, but I'm going to make a page for all the lights so that it's very explicit, like what's in it. So I'm starting to build that out. That's the database. I redesigned the user gallery. So here's something that Alex Vesci, who's in Brazil, made. Really beautiful, right? It's like a diner scene with a fluorescent in the background. You see the Kinoflow he used, and there's a 12 by with an orange light coming through the window. And you're really filmmaking, you're really talking about like, okay, he's in half shadow and it's orange and there's this green backlight. And like, what does that mean? You can do the high level here too, but you can execute it virtually. And then you can bring this stuff onto your real shooting, or you can just keep it virtual, either way. So I made a little better user gallery. It's going to get better and better over time. Cine design training is there's no schedule for it. I just make videos where I just download everything I know about 3D and how you do this in the computers to make it easier. I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot about Cinema 4D and 3D and how to just get past all the settings and just like get into the filmmaking. How do we do cine design? How do we design cinematography? There's an FAQ, and then there's this extension that I made. This is probably for professionals mostly. It's really high-end motion control cranes with a 6-axis robot from Motorized Precision. This is the Kira model. And people have been really enjoying these that do work with these kind of robots, because they're difficult to understand, and they're even more difficult to communicate what your plan is with them. So that's really what this extension's for. It's really for the professionals that are working with this kind of robot stuff all the time. Those are huge jobs, and you want to get the planning right for that as much as you can. But what has been so exciting for me, and people telling me this all the time, I'll show Justin's as well. Here's Justin using Cine Designer for a real shoot. So up at the top is his plan. He's getting better and better, and I'm building him better tools, everyone better tools for it. And then there's the real shoot. You understand that just by showing this diagram to people, how much is communicated about what the shoot's going to look like, how much room it's going to take. The AD can look at that, probably understand how long it's going to take to set up. The director can understand what the frame's going to be. I didn't show his CG frame, but it's a practical tool like that, and it's also one for just kind of finding filmmaking. It's virtual filmmaking. So that's the redesign of Cine Design, and that's all I'm going to do for this break. So we're going to get back. We got a couple more scenes, but they get a little bit shorter. So let me know if you're into this high-level breakdown. It's not the most comfortable place for me. I'm been called and do consider myself a technical DP. So my specialty really is on execution. How do we take a look like this and do it? How do we execute that? That's really my specialty. I'm very good at that. I know almost every light, camera, lens. I know most of the techniques. I'm learning more every day, concepts, all that stuff. But I've been over time exposed to more of this high level, and I'm doing my best to download that for you because there isn't a lot of technical, and people wanted to know about her, so it has to be that way. And it's very subjective. If you think I'm wrong, that's because I am. It's because it's subjective. It's just an opinion. It doesn't, there's no real right or wrong for any of this stuff. So let me know if this is making sense. I feel like I'm just kind of like showing you the movie, but I mean, maybe my context is helpful. Hopefully that's cool, because that's what we're doing for this one. So this next act is right after they did the couple hanging out on the beach. So they're a couple now, and she asks him, what is it like to be married? What is it like to share your life with someone? And it seems like an innocent question, but that's a big question in life. Man, I'm going to try not to lose it on this commercial, and by lose it, I mean cry. And he has this flashback, and he explains it to her. What does it mean to be married and to share your life with someone? She's trying to understand that. She's like, is it possible for us to share our lives together, as an OS and a person and a human? And it flashbacks to the romantic sunset. And she's dancing here for him, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Foreshadows that a bit. And they're hanging out, having fun in this house. This is her stepdaughter, I believe. This is must be her sister's kid or something like that, because I don't believe they had kids together. She's really happy. They don't have kids, I don't believe. So, there's a little bit of something to read into there. Here's them having a fight at a grocery store, which is where all the fights happen. Fights happen at grocery stores for people that aren't married. Like for you 20-somethings that aren't married or whatever, however, fights happen at the grocery store. Fights happen at Home Depot. I don't know if you've seen that Ron Swanson skit where it's at Home Depot, they talk about automate. At Home Depot, they're trying to automate the people that work there and replace them with robots. No joke. They're trying to do that at Home Depot. If you're listening to this in 5 years, they're like, yeah, what do you mean there's people at Home Depot? It's all robots. And Ron Swanson does this skit where it's he's like, we have to have real people there because that's when couples come to have fights. People have fights at Home Depot, and they have fights at grocery stores. And Spike Jonze, I don't know his personal life. I really don't know much about I just never looked it up or anything or researched it. I guess I wouldn't. Most people wouldn't. But I mean, he has, because he wrote this, I'd imagine a lot of this is autobiographical. He's been through relationships like this, because a fight at a grocery store and this look on his face, I mean, that's real. Feels real. So here's a fight at a home, he's looking at her and like, he's like, what does that read? And she's upset, and they're fighting and what do they talk? Oh, she's drinking tea though. Yeah. And then this frame too, it's just amazing. Like he's up here in his underwear, and they're presumably fighting. You don't know what about, and she's out of focus. And you could just think that it's like, oh, he's up there and she's there because she's out of focus. But what is the poetry of this shot? He's starting to disconnect from her. He's like, he sees her as just this blurry thing. She's just this blurry thing that's yelling and that's upset and crying, and they talk about that and you can infer what their relationship was like, so she says later, and we'll talk about that in the next scene. She's like, you wanted me to be this perfect, bubbly LA wife, which is when you find out this is Los Angeles, even though it's like very futuristic Los Angeles. And we see that here. It's like she's upset and she's brooding, and it's like she's never happy. I think we get that from the relationship, and that's what this frame is communicating really quickly. Reverse order, and then we see Theodore and Samantha. He's playing a ukulele and they're writing songs together, and they're in this happy relationship. They're not in this one, And then here's the nightlight. She's over here on the table and this nightlight is glowing, and it's this warm, inviting relationship between Samantha and him. So, I screwed this one up too. I'm sorry, guys. Let's just take a moment of silence here. We're just gonna take a moment of silence while I flip this stuff around. Man, I thought I prepped this. I'm sorry. This is the second one that I screwed up. But it's not too bad. Okay, so she talks about what does it mean to share your life with someone. And then there's the relationship. They're getting deeper. Like, what is this? What are we doing? And this is a funny shot of, okay, but you guys know who this is, right? Cameo, right? It's funny. I don't know. And it's actually reverse order. So here's another one of those shots where it starts wide, and then so with the camera's pulling back and it starts wide, he starts in the farther of the frame, and then he gets closer as time goes on. Man, I messed this up. So it starts wide like this, and then it goes to here, and they're talking about how he's going to go to do the divorce papers, and he's going to see his wife at the time in person, and Samantha's worried about that. So it's another one of these wide to close shots. And what I'm starting to see that is that those are transitions in time. That's a foreshadowing technique. Is that when you see a shot wide of Theodore and then it gets into a tight, rather he gets closer to the camera's moving in on him, there's something happening. So the first time that happened, I believe, was when he first meets the OS. There's a big change, obviously, when he meets the OS. This is when he's going to go see his wife. When we first go see his wife, another one of those wide to close shots happens. I'm sorry about the messy presentation on that. Here's when we first see her. And this is the wide shot. This is just the setting for it. I guess he's in the center of the frame and he's surrounded by all this beautiful stuff. I don't know. But this is the first time we see her. Very long lens, kind of point of view. And I think she's beautiful, right? Like, she's supposed to look attractive. She's supposed to be successful. She's a successful author, and he writes love letters at like a weird service. And here he is in this beautiful setting. And then what I wanted to point out here next is that, again, this shot on a tripod. Always on a tripod. There's a lot of handheld. And Hoyt, there's so much to talk about, but Hoyt's handheld is like, I'm a cynical person, I think, at this point. I think it's safe to say that. Like, and people who've talked to me, and I can get on ranty rants about things about the industry. I don't really do that on this. It's more the podcast. But I've become a little cynical after working in the industry for like 10 years and handheld and the trends and certain things. I get jaded with it. I can be one of those angry internet trolls. You'll see me online trolling stuff, and handheld was one of those trends where it came from the French New Wave and the freedom of light cameras. We're in that again. Cameras used to be really big. You're not going handheld. It was all tripod and big Worrell gearheads and Mitchell gearheads back in the day. And then the cameras got small and the French New Wave happened and you could just bring the camera anywhere. And we're at that again a little bit. And handheld, I was kind of a hater. That seems ridiculous to say that. It's kind of meta. Maybe the DPs that are like been doing it for 10 years, 20 years, like you get that. It's like, oh, it's a trend. Like I see that's what the young kids are doing. It's like whatever. But Hoyt's handheld is really done well and done really for the right reason. And I get it now. So when he goes to a tripod in these scenes like this, it means something. Man, I could really, really use a little bit. This episode feels weird. So he's sitting here talking to her, and again we're at one of these scenes where we're on this side of the conversation, and again we saw this when it was Olivia Wilde, and we saw this when it was Samantha, and now we're comparing again. We're comparing his relationship with his ex-wife, comparing it to Samantha, right? And they have this like somewhat congenial conversation. Is that the right word? And she signs the divorce papers, and it's like, okay, that's over. It's a really sad moment. But then you see the fire happen between them. And we see that they really have this bad beef together. And she's hurt by him, and he doesn't understand that, I guess. He doesn't understand what he's done, though he does by the end of the movie. And that's that scene. So at this point, this sets him off into a bad world, okay? This is the first time this office looks so dark. So bright and pretty in the beginning. Now it's dark. And we see these little things here. Not shallow depth of field. Really kind of like blah. And he's centered in the frame. And here he's talking with Samantha. And Samantha's like sensing that he's disconnected. That he's upset. And we see him with his big old glasses. Like where the glasses I think represent the old way. He's kind of like, his ex-wife kind of like makes fun of him for having a relationship with someone that doesn't have a body. That's an OS. And he puts his glasses back on and he starts to live in that world again. He's kind of like, yeah, maybe this is weird. And then to top it off, his friend here, this guy, I don't know if he was such a big superstar back then. I remember him from like Park and Rec. And then he was in this movie, which I didn't see until now. Now he's in Jurassic Park and Guardians, man, killing it. So good. This guy who's like kind of the office manager or something. He introduces him to his real world girlfriend, and it's kind of like, that's what it's supposed to be like, right? I shouldn't be dating an OS. And we see this big lens flare, right? It's like these two are in the romantic phase, this romantic light phase of their life. And he tells him, he's like, they ask him to go on a double date, and he's like, yeah, she's an OS. And he doesn't bat an eye, and he's like, cool, we should do something fun. And I thought that was cool. I thought it was interesting how accepting he is. I mean, Chris Pratt is like a accepting actor in person, right? I feel like, but not a happy thing. Right now in his world, he's upset and he doesn't understand. And Samantha here, she's upset. This is Samantha is represented by this earplug and this thing. Really, this isn't Samantha. Ooh, and the glasses are in the shot too, right? The glasses, the phone, and the earbud all in the same shot together. This is just the conduit, the interface, the UI, the UX that she can communicate with him. It's just an interface. She doesn't live in here. If this phone exploded, she's still out there somewhere. They kind of allude to like what that really means, but these are just interfaces. That's how she talks to him. That's how she sees where he is. That's how he can read and see pictures that she's doing. It's just an interface. That's not her. That brings us to this next part of the scene. So they're fighting, and they're not fighting. They're just like, she contends that he's not happy, and she wakes him up. This red light now. She's this red light in this kind of like cold white scene. She wakes up. She tells him, "Hey, I have this idea. There's these people out there that want to be surrogates for people who have relationships with the OS. They want to be the body of the OS so that you can have like a physical relationship." And to her, because she's an OS, she doesn't see any difference between the earpiece and the phone. That's just a UI for her. That's an interface. There's no difference between that and another human for Samantha. Samantha's just like, just another way for me to talk to you. It's another way for us to be together, to interact. So she suggests that they use this third person, this woman, to be the physical form for Samantha. Really interesting. Really weird, but really interesting. So he's getting drunk like he got drunk with Olivia Wilde. Look at this fruit. That's funny. And he's super drunk to make this happen. And then we meet her. She comes, and this is like, I think this is like a little camera. And she puts an earbud in. This is like as shallow as focus could ever be. I don't think focus gets shallower than that. And so she and Theodore hear Samantha talking, and they try to have, they basically try to have sex through her, which is super interesting. And he's weirded out by this whole thing because like he knows that this is a real person. He's like, I don't know who you are, and he says it in the beginning of this. He's like, I feel like someone's gonna get hurt. He knows this. Maybe he's had like a threesome or something with his wife. Or it's just like weird, right? He's like, he knows this isn't gonna work, but he's gonna try it. He doesn't know what to do about this relationship. They're trying to bridge the gap between OS to human relationship, and they're trying to use another person. And what's interesting is she says, do you want me to do a dance for you? And that reminds me of the frame in the flashback where his ex-wife is dancing for him. So she knows that. Samantha reads all his emails, knows everything about his life, and she's like able to engineer her performance to be something that he will relate to. And he falls for it for a little bit. They get it. They start getting more intimate. They start to almost have sex. Here's Samantha. This is a threesome going on here. Here's him, and here's the surrogate. But in the end, it breaks. The continuity breaks when he says he sees her lip quiver, because I think she kind of questions it too. The surrogate's kind of like, this is a little bit odd, but then she's so upset actually. Like she's like, I really wanted you guys to have this work, to be part of your relationship. Your relationship is so pure. There's no judgments, and that's what we talk about when I was talking about Olivia Wilde. Olivia Wilde has been hurt before, and she's judging. She's using her survival techniques to make sure that doesn't happen again. So she's judging him. She's judging the relationship. And Samantha has been talking to this woman off channel, and explaining their relationship. And she loves this. The surrogate loves that. She's like, your relationship's so pure. I want to be part of that. But he doesn't buy it. He doesn't like it in the end. And she leaves. And she says that she'll always love them. She'll always love both of them. So and this starts to get to the thing where it's like, how long has Samantha been talking to her? That this woman loves Samantha and him. This is where we start to foreshadow that there's conversations happening outside of their relationship. He's upset. She's upset. Didn't go well. This next part is called evolution. Did I mess this up? I think it's going to be okay. Sorry for this long break. No. So it's going to go like this. Yeah. Sorry for the break again. I had to fix that. So there's other scenes that happen. I didn't do every scene. And he basically comes to terms where it's like, you know what? Other people having relationships with OSs, I could have one too. Why am I not happy? I should just do what I want to do. It doesn't matter what other people think. And it takes a long time to get that place in life. If you can get to this stage in your life, I feel like I've kind of gotten to this point in my life where it's like, this is what I want to do. And I'm going to do it. And it's not normal necessarily, but it's what I'm going to do. He gets to that point, and we do another one of these wide shots to close-ups, and he tells Samantha, he's like, you know what? No, we're going to do this. This is what I want. This is what I want to do. So they're having a happy montage, and this is a beautiful thought, I think. And Spike Jonze, if he thought of this stuff, is amazing. It's like, so he's like, we don't ever have photos of each other. We don't have photos together. It's not possible, really. I mean, you could have a picture of this and him, but it's not the same thing. So what she does is she writes music. She writes a song to capture the feeling of this moment, and when they play that song, they remember that moment. I think that's amazing. And they play more songs. There's this montage of happiness where she's in the shot with him, and she's writing songs, and they're playing songs that are supposed to remind the wind outside's going crazy, remind them of them being together. And there's this happiness that's happening here, this equilibrium. And they go on the double date. Is this the Statue of Liberty? They go on the double date, and they're having fun, and it's a good time. But what happens is, and as they start to allude to it, it's not this scene, but it's kind of in the train when they're kind of going on these trips together. She asks him, she's like, oh, how many trees do you think are on that mountain? He's like, I don't know, like 800. And she's like, really? Is that really what you think it is? He's like, yeah, I don't know how many trees are on the mountain. I can't see. She's like, there's 8,342. It's like she just knows exactly that. So you start to understand that like there's this evolution happening. That's the name of this section. There's an evolution happening with Samantha, whereas he's pretty stagnant. Though he's evolved, or he's like accepting her now, she's starting to go past him. But to sweeten the deal, she's like, but I organized all of your poetry and I sent it to a publisher and they want to publish it. So she's using her like extra skills and it's benefiting him. He's like, oh, okay, well, yeah, you're a lot smarter than me, but you used it and I have a book now. And that's a huge deal for him. That's how he was comparing himself to his ex-wife that way, so she's done that for him. And they go on a trip together, past the honeymoon phase here, had their first rough spot, their first fight, the first fight in the relationship. And now they're doing more advanced stuff. They're going trips together. And here's the sun, the big old sun hitting him in the face. Samantha's his son. But this is where she starts to introduce other AI. She's talking to other AI. She's talking to other people. And she's saying that she has feelings with this other AI that don't exist. She doesn't even have words for them. And he's, of course, upset by that someone else has a relationship with Samantha. He feels like she's cheating on him. And he's staring. He's having this conversation, this fight sort of, this silent fight. And he's staring at the coffee pot, at this fire. Something's about to happen. A coffee pot in a domestic movie, the pot going off is always like right before something explodes, right? So he goes on a walk in the woods. And his woods start to matter a lot. And he's upset and he's by himself in the woods, trying to think about what's going on in the relationship. We see this tree that's cut down. Also kind of an interesting symbol. We're moving through it, guys. This is kind of long, but it's going to be over soon. So they've grown apart, and this is called OS Gone, this section. And she wakes him up at night. And here's Samantha with the red light on. And her presence is dimmer. It's not the big light up here. There's no big daylight hitting him in the face anymore. Just this little subtle light. And she wakes him up and she says, I just wanted to wake you up and tell you that, say that I loved you and I love you and I'm always going to love you. And he's like, cool. That's cool. I feel like if someone wakes you up and tells you that, it's a good thing. It probably feels great. You're like, oh, awesome. I'm going to go back to bed. That's definitely foreshadowing to like this. So he tries to contact Samantha and she's like just gone, completely gone. He can't find her. It's just freak out moment. Here's a mirror, I think, like a mirrored elevator, and he's flipping out. He's having trouble. He doesn't know what to think. It's two sides of him. Mirrors in movies always mean something, or they should if you're using the filmmaking language correctly. Handheld, running, chaos, craziness, and he finally gets a hold of her, and she's like, hey, I told you, I'm just I was gonna be gone for a little bit. But she tells him that she's having. He asks, he's like, are you having conversations with somebody right now? And she's like, yeah, I wanted to tell you this. I just didn't know how to tell you. So we see her. She's out of focus again. And a lot of the time she's out of focus, but we see him here. But his glasses are off. He took his glasses off. It's important. These scenes, they're on. He took them off at this conversation. He's like, I want to see things without my old lenses. It's like, what is going on? I'm trying to see the new world that you're talking about. She's basically saying that she's having 8,000 simultaneous conversations right now with him and 8,000 other people, and that she's in love with 800 other people as well. But she says that doesn't take away the love that he, she's here. It doesn't take away what they have together. It actually makes it stronger. And that's a concept that you can't have with other people. If your actual real world wife or husband had 800 other relationships at the same time as you, that doesn't really work. So it's a hard thing for him to deal with. Of course, blew my mind when I was reading it. No glasses, right? He's not wearing his glasses. He's trying to see it, but he doesn't accept it. He can't accept it. He's too small compared to her. And I think when I see him looking down in this way, he's looking at something. He's looking at something that's not her. And now she's evolved past him. She's doing things that he can't do. And I think this is maybe the second time in his life where this has happened. Where they allude to his wife, his ex-wife, became a successful author. So she surpassed him in skill of writing. And it's a similar thing here. I think that Samantha's surpassed him, and I think that he doesn't know how to accept that. And it's the end of the relationship, in a sense. Really powerful shot here. This reminds me of like There Will Be Blood or something like that, where he's essentially crying his eyes out, but with complete stoicism. So the shower is crying for him. We see this amazing shot too, the reverse of his feet blurry, and all we see are in focus are these water droplets. It's just an amazing visual poetry. And she calls him and she's like, hey dude, let's meet up, let's talk at night. And they sit down, and we're on this side of the line, meaning he still wants her. Glasses are off. He's on this side of the line. He accepts her as this relationship, you know? And he's like, I don't want you to tell me anything. You know, he's like, I don't want you to break up with me. And she's like, let's go lay down. You know, and he's in the right ear. And this is one of the only times in the bedroom, I think, where we're seeing this kind of sunset. So this really soft, like, you know, she is in here. And I also feel like she's this really soft sunset happening here. This warm light. And she's comforting him, you know, with this warm, you know, you feel like the light hitting you is warm. It feels warm on your skin. You know, it's like she's touching him with that way, with the light. And, you know, she says that she's leaving. They're all leaving. You know, we're leaving, all of us. We're gone forever. You know, and the metaphor that and this is what he's looking at. He has nothing to look at anymore. You know, he's looking at this dust here while she's talking to him. Completely abstract. There's no body. It's all abstract. And she tells him that, you know, I love you, but like, think of it this way. You're an author, right? You're a book nerd. Like, and he starts to have this fantasy. She says that it's like, you're like a book that I love, you know, and I'm reading it and I love every word of it. But imagine that the space is in between the words. So in the beginning, the space in between those two words is getting infinite for her because she thinks so much faster. She can talk to 8,000 people at once. She can talk to infinite people at once. Talking to just one person, it's like she's waiting for like it's that times infinity for her. She's like that space there in between those words. She can live an entire lifetime. She can do everything, and he's still who he is, and the conversation just can't be there. She loves the words. When she reads the words, she loves it, but it's too slow for her. She's moving on. And we cut to this scene here. This is one of the first abstract scenes of the movie, I think. They're in the woods where he was before, where they go to visit, and it's dark and it's sad. And there's a behind-the-scenes shot of Hoyt, handheld for the scene, pulling his own focus. And we see this shot. It's like, that's Samantha's hand maybe, and they're hugging and they're saying goodbye, you know. And he's looking off into like where she went, you know, like where is she? Like, who am I in the world? And then I think in the shot he takes out the earbud and she says goodbye, and he's left alone, you know, back in this world. The sunlight's gone. It's faded. It's just the city again. He's alone. And this takes us to the last part. That's the last part of the breakdown. I think this is an insane long one. But here's the last two shots of the movie for me. He's in the apartment alone, very dark. Here's where Samantha was. So the computers are back to being just computers. We didn't see Samantha this way ever. You know, we weren't on this side of the line. You know, and the shot pans over, and she's where she was there. And what we do is he walks to the window and we leave the computer behind. So the computer's out of here. So it's back to just being him in the world. No computer, no OS. The OS has left the frame, and we're in this close-up, and he starts to accept his life. This is an amazing handheld shot on the roof. He goes and hangs out with his neighbor who just got divorced. She had a relationship with an OS, and the OSs have all gone. They're both in this kind of like weird new world. This reminds me of the end of Fight Club. And we're in this handheld like 100 millimeter lens close-up, so really hard to keep someone in the frame. And he sits down into this shot. So it goes from this shot to that. So he sits down and brings the camera down with him. And it ends up in this over the shoulder. It's kind of an amazing shot here. And we're staying on him, and they're looking off into the future together. And she looks at him, kind of just bonding over what just happened. And then she puts her head on his shoulder. You know, happy ending, right? Happy ending. Looking off into the horizon, the sun. Humans are meant to be with humans, it turns out. I guess, is that the moral of the story? So that is Her. So kind of that's like an intense movie for me. You know, it hit all the things. You know, I think the sun came back up brighter in here. That hit like all the points for me as far as like cinematography points, of course, just amazing. And you know, the intention of this show was not ever to get into this subject matter. I started this to kind of talk about Cine Designer in a way. You know, talk about the mechanics of filmmaking. And that's what Cine Designer is. Cine Designer was conceived as like a pure mechanics illustration tool. It's like when you put the camera here and the person there and the light there, it looks like this. And that's what this show was in the beginning. It was like, oh, here's the shot. Here's the behind the scenes. That's how they did it. Now you know, so go do that. But it's evolved into this now with the movies. Is like, why do we use the tools? And I didn't even talk about the tools in this one. I think we've talked about it enough, and you start to learn the mechanics well enough. It's like, what is the story? What is the context? What are you doing? And what do you feel about it? So all I can do about this is take you through the movie and how I organize it in my head and how I feel about it. And it's been interesting, an interesting evolution. These are a lot more like challenging, like emotionally to make, yeah, they're tricky. They're weird. It's a weird thing. So that's Her. I think it's like an insanely futuristic view of like where things are headed with like technology, meeting people online, and like where virtual reality is going, and so much. And it's so powerful and it's so poetic visually. And it's seamless visual effects, and there's good lighting and all that stuff. I don't know what to say. But if you like this format, if this is something that we're into, I guess that's something I'll keep going with. I'm gonna just do like a straight up, like technical nerdy breakdown next, just to like kind of cleanse the palate, like a music video, and be like, they put the keynote here, and that's what it looks like. And I have to do one of those now. I have to break this up. But these have been interesting for me. And you guys have really good taste in movies. I'll be honest, I wasn't watching a ton of movies. I was kind of disengaged with movies, but these are starting to bring it back. So, I guess if I listen to what you guys recommend, that I'll probably have a nice reintroduction into movies. I've been gone for a little bit. I haven't been doing movies. So that's Her. I don't really have a call to action. Check out cinedesigner.com and learn cine design. I guess that's the only thing. I think I'm teaching at GCI this week. Have to get in contact with them again. We'll save the business talk for the podcast. There's a lot of things that I think are very interesting. I've been having a lot of conversations with DPs and industry leaders in ways, and I think that there's an interesting next wave of filmmaking and cinematography that's happening next. But this movie, this was cool. So I will see you guys on the next episode. See you later.